Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Welcome. It's time to do roll call for the Fitch-Rona EMS Commission meeting. It is 7 o'clock. We'll start the meeting now. I'm James Roberts, citizen representative of Fitch-Rona EMS. We'll conduct roll call now.
Fusco.
Present.
Luganbo.
Present.
Lytle.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Paul. Lonsdorf. Lepper. Johnson. Anderson.
Here.
Dostalek.
Here.
Anders.
Here. We do have a quorum.
Oh,
There's public comment, but we have no public comment.
Nope.
I'd like to welcome the people from town of Verona, city of Verona, and city of Fitchburg. And if you'd want to introduce yourself and say who you're with.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Rata Frata. I am the mayor of the city of Fitchburg.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Gerhardt. I am the Alder and Council President for City of Fitchburg.
Bill Jetzer, I'm an Alder in District 2 for the City of Fitchburg.
Thank you for coming. Luke Diaz, you have anything to add? You're online?
No, just happy to be here and listen to the meeting.
We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Would you like to introduce yourself and who you're with?
I'm another person, Dave Rose, City of Fitchburg District 1 rep.
Sure, my name is Luke Diaz. I'm the current mayor of the city of Run.
Thank you. We'll proceed.
Next is review and approval of the minutes.
We'd like to review and approval of the minutes from last year's October meeting. Is there any questions on that at all? Go ahead.
We did have one Verona Alder attend last year's meeting. Just a minor correction to the spelling. It's Brandon Braithwaite. He's no longer on Verona City Council, but just a minor typo there.
Thank you. We'd like a motion to approve the correction to the minutes.
So I'll second the motion with the correction.
We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All against, opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. We'll move on to employee recognition. I'll turn that over to Chief Anderson.
Thank you. So this is the opportunity we always like to recognize. We do recognize our employees every month for the years of service that they had when we present my chief's report to you each month. But I'd like to always take this opportunity at our annual meeting every year to present kind of the big milestones, just those little 5-year intervals. So this year we actually did have Greg Bailey, who is with us. This is his 15th year with us. And then we're actually kind of celebrating the 5-year start of when we put that third station in service. So we actually have Jamie Ennis, Chip Hankley, Hayden Latch, and Ryan Robertson, who've all been with us for 5 years. So none of them were able to make it with us tonight, but we do actually have certificates and pins that they are given for every 5 years of service. So I'd like to recognize them for their years of service.
And now we'll move on to the chief's report.
So I always like to walk around it, right? That's just what I do, right? So I don't like being tagged back there. So thank you, alders, for coming tonight and taking the time to come to our commission and actually see what we do. So this is just kind of a summary of the chief's report that I present every month at our district meeting, with a little bit of the state of the state. And for anyone who is watching online or really unfamiliar with what we do, it's great that most people's expectation, you call 911 and an ambulance shows up, which is awesome, right? That's what we're supposed to do. But most people don't know what we do. So I always like to share this information. This is our 2025 staff picture. I always pick the day of the year where the sun is always shining, which makes for a beautiful picture, but we're all standing in front of it, staring into the sun. So we actually do publish this. It goes up at our station. About every 2 years, we try to get everybody together. That is our current roster with our staffing in front of Fitchburg Fire Station number 2. Updated information. So based on every year we have to file our population that we serve with the state. We get some actually additional funding based on that population. Current population for our 3 municipalities, City of Fitchburg, City of Verona, Verona Township, is going to be 55,172 people, just a little bit more than where we were last year. What that does, if we take, as we talk about the budget tonight, once we subtract run revenue from that, so what's remaining with the municipalities ultimately pay, right? Granted, we're going to talk a little bit about it's divided a little bit differently than just a blanket number. But if we took every person who lived in our district and what the municipalities pay, every person in our district technically pays about $41.26 for their ambulance service. Dane County does actually do an annual report that I do share with the alders every year. We're right about in the middle of what the municipalities are throughout Dane County. The highest one being, we looked at it today, was about 134, and we still actually have some agencies that offer their services for free. So we're right in the middle. 71 square miles. We are still running 3 ambulances, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This year, with part of our replacement program, which I'll talk about in a little bit with CIP, we do have 6 ambulances in our fleet. That is the numbers. I always like to bring up, right, we have 41, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. Those are our ambulance numbers. If anybody knows, we're missing number 42. 42 isn't missing. 42, since the dawn of time, has been Brooklyn's ambulance. And it's public words I can't told me when I asked them if I could have 42. They told me things I can't share in public. Said, no, you can't. But the summary was, no, you can't. So we got 41. Brooklyn 42 is Brooklyn will forever be Brooklyn Rescue 42. We have 2 support SUVs. They're car 15, car 17, if you're ever listening to a radio. We do have a Polaris EUTV, does have a patient insert on it, predominantly used for special events and high school events. And then we do have a responder rehab support trailer that we use multiple purposes, support events. We take that when we do large events, the big one being the cross-country invitational at the Verona High School. September of every year. It's the first invitational of the year, and we always estimate there's a couple thousand students, spectators, and coaches there. So we actually take that rehab trailer out there. It carries a lot of supplies with us. The other part we use that for is for structure fires or large event fires. Can use it for police as well, but we use it for fires. As opposed to having a handful of everything on every ambulance, we got a repurposed trailer a handful of years ago from the county. We have all of our stuff in there. We just take that trailer with us. There's a shelter, chairs, cooling fan, nutrition, cots, lots of items in there that just really help support our fire partners. This is what our district looks like. That 71 square miles, you can see from the stars in there, that's where those 3 stations are. We're going to put that on a heat map in a little bit, so you'll see that those stations are actually pretty appropriately placed. So nice job to all the people who have planned those over the years. They're where they should be. The people are truly what make, right? We can have all the equipment what we want, but if we don't have our highly trained staff, dedicated staff to do what we do, doesn't make a difference. We have 21 full-time paramedics. 3 administrative staff, that was myself and the 2 deputy chiefs up in front of you here. Our part-time office manager, Michelle, who we couldn't live without, waving her hand. And we have anywhere between about 15 and 20 part-time paramedics who work. They fill predominantly open shifts for vacation and sick time. They help fill those special events as well. They help up staff when we have larger events and we put another ambulance in service. We have 5 what we'll call them LTEMTs, so they're not paramedics. A couple of those are actually Fitchburg firefighters. A couple we have just picked up from surrounding areas. They help us out with special events. They actually don't ride in the ambulance for us, but they will help fill. We do have a contract with the Alliant Energy Center, so we can actually send one of our paramedics and an EMT out there to staff that ambulance. We have 2 EMS EMT paid interns. That's our 2-year paramedic internship. We have an application process every spring. They get assigned a mentor. They're with that mentor for 2 years as they go to MATC and get their paramedic technician degree. So the first year they do their general education requirements. The second year they do the paramedic part of that course. Meanwhile, they're here running anywhere between 72 to 96 hours a month, getting actually that real world experience, working with somebody and opportunity to come back and say, I have questions, right? And actually get a phenomenal education. And then we always talk about, we still have Tom Bates, who's our volunteer EMT. He's been here since 1998, I want to say, going on about 35 years. He still works every Sunday for about 4 hours, just comes in and hops on that ambulance. And he just renewed some certifications again, so I think we got another cycle with him. So this is the part of the report that I just share with you, the commission every month, and then I subsequently share it out to the mayors and the city administrators the following day on Friday. So this is what those numbers look like. We do compare it to the previous 2 years, as well as the calls for service for this year where we're at. As you can see, we are at 8.3% where we were over last year. Historically, we'll see those numbers in a little bit. If we go back to the dawn of the service in 1947, we average about 4% per year. Last year, we were significantly higher. This year, we're still on that track for that 8.3%, about 5,600 calls. Compared to why we look, it's not countywide. There's about 20-some EMS agencies, fire EMS agencies in Dane County. But this is where these are where we use our comparables, is Middleton and Sun Prairie. And you can see over the course of the year, now the 23 to 24 jump, you can see we're all in that kind of 7 to 6%. You'll see that huge increase for Sun Prairie. Sun Prairie did a thing, I guess, in 2024, and they actually acquired the entire Marshall EMS. Marshall issues for the reasons they had. They actually started contracting, taking over the Marshall, Medina, York, and I think there's one more township in there. So they actually grew their area significantly, causing their run volume to go up in that year. So that's why you'll see that big hiccup in that year. But you can see just from those numbers, even though Sun Prairie is our true comparable, we are the second largest EMS agency outside of the city of Madison.
I have a question. Are the Middleton and Sun Prairie, are they districts or they are?
No, they are city owned. So both of those municipalities, so Sun Prairie recently changed. Middleton is the opposite of Fitchburg, and that the city of Middleton actually owns, per se, Middleton EMS, and their fire department is actually a private entity. And Sun Prairie, just 2 years ago, merged both of their departments. It became a city, but Sun Prairie was set up the same where Sun Prairie EMS was a city entity and fire was private. 2 years ago, fire was brought into that as well. So now Sun Prairie, as of now, is actually both fire and EMS. Comparing where we look at for municipalities to the end of the year, this is pretty spot on as well. It hasn't historically changed in many years. Fitchburg tends to be our busier of the cities, right? Somewhere between 63 and 67%. Roughly, City of Rona 27%. Town of Rona tends to be about 3 to 5%. 1% of our calls in the city of Madison, and then we kind of have a spattering of where we go with and help out our neighbors. This is what it looks like in a month view, so it's a little bit off. I'm going to do the pie charts and the graph charts for the different types of people who like their information. As you can see, right, largely 62% of those calls, City of Verona, City of Fitchburg, read in that City of Verona, and then those other places we go for last month. I do always report these to our commission every month as well, so these are our fractal times. We look at them every month. I do keep track of them over the course of the year. It's another pretty consistent number. I did put on there, reason we look at those numbers, a couple of those things we control. One of those is how fast we get out the door. That's that notified to en route, right from the time that call goes in till the time our vehicles are supposed to be in motion. En route to arrived on scene. When we put both of those together to our notified to arrived on scene, you can see our median time is less than 5 minutes, right? So phenomenal. The median time of our response time in anywhere in our district is less than 5 minutes. That 9.17 minutes, and reminding, I always like to share the 9.17, that's not 9 minutes and 17 seconds, it's 9.17 minutes. That's how it gets reported. It's too hard for me to convert decimals into minutes to something or other, right? So I just put it up there and point that out to you. That is a benchmark number. For the reason I put down at the bottom there is the NFPA says, NFPA in 1970, which is the National Fire Protection Agency, which sets the standards for fire agencies, has a standard turnout and travel time, which is going to be our notified to arrival on scene, of 9 minutes with an ALS ambulance 90% of the time. I do put the caveat on that is in an urban environment. We are not an urban environment. They actually don't change that they have an urban and a rural. If you hit the rural environment, it's somewhere about 14 minutes, right? We're not rural either. So pretty happy with the 9.17 minutes for us to, by the time we get that page to the time we arrive somewhere, 90th percentile, we are meeting that NFPA standard.
Where does all the construction in all of this fit? I mean, are we staying in our good numbers? Are those still good numbers for all the construction? You're talking about one person that has every road around me closed.
Yeah, so this is why I like to use the fractal times, right? Because one, it throws out the anomalies on both ends of those. The other part I always like to make people aware of is and I don't put those numbers in here, or the data in here, which I probably should, is we do not respond to all calls emergently, right? So you can actually look, there are a significant amount of studies out there that say responding emergently truly does not make a difference in response, a significant difference in response times. So that 9.17 minutes, and I don't even want to give you the number because I don't know exactly what it is. But if we get called to somebody who stubbed their toe, right? And we probably do get called to people who stubbed your toe, right? If you get called to somebody who stubbed their toe, or really a non-emergent reason, right? Somebody's just sick, but they don't have transportation, but they need to go to the hospital. We don't respond with lights and sirens to that. Meaning it will take a little bit longer to get there because it is safer. But those numbers are all included in these fractal times. So I don't want to say they're skewed, but even with the non-emergent responses we do, and we have a protocol for that, we work with the 911 center for that, we're meeting those national standards, even with our non-emergent response times. Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you, Scott. A number of years ago, I was on the fire station siting committee in Fitchburg. And at that time, I was advocating for a central fire station large enough to cover the whole city. And so, nope, it won't work. NFPA is 4 minutes or something like that. Why wouldn't the ambulance be the same as the fire? I'm not. You're talking to a layman that this isn't my business, but
sure. So of course I'm providing you selective information, right? This whole, if you read the whole document there, it actually differentiates ambulance responses versus fire responses. Fire responses are less than 4 minutes to get that initial fire apparatus on there. There is a goal to get a BLS ambulance or a basic ambulance there in less than 6 minutes and an ALS there in less than 9 minutes. This is the collaboration with our fire partners. Why we do on those higher level calls, our fire department does go. We do actually, even within the city of Fitchburg, the city of Verona is set up. I'll give you the example, right? If our fire station number 3, the South Sain Road, and to your point, one of the largest reasons of putting station number 3 is where it was is because of the Southdale neighborhood, and we can go back 5 years and look at this number. It was higher than 9 minutes. But we say that ambulance at Fitchburg Fire Station number 3 is out. They're transporting a patient, and say we get a second call in that Southdale neighborhood, which means even if it's a lower acuity call, now that ambulance is coming from Marketplace, which is greater than 10 minutes away. Even if it's a low acuity call, based on these standards, they will actually send a fire apparatus as well. They can start that care. That happens with the city of Verona as well. So that it truly is showing that relationship we have with fire, getting there, and all of the career firefighters at both municipalities are EMTs and can start that BLS care. Other things there that are not, it's not a standard, but it's one of our protocols, ones we look at, is that on scene to transporting time. All right, most of the times we are on scene 13 minutes or less. That 90th percentile is 24 minutes or less that we're actually sitting on scene. Our goal for at least emergent patients is anywhere less than 15 minutes. Because of some of the restrictions we have in the reporting abilities on here, this has all calls on there. Again, going back to the fractal times, if we happen to sit on a police standby for 6 hours, right, the goal is that this throws 6 hours out. And there are patients, right, if it's on the 3rd floor, that's a no transport, it's a kid, we're trying to get a hold of somebody, right, there are just calls that complicate things, where just that time factor of being on scene is going to be given up in order to best care for a patient situation. So again, there's no standard, but it's something we watch, right? How long are we sitting on scene? Because ultimately, most of these patients need to be at a hospital. The transporting to destination, right, that's the physical geography of getting a patient to the hospital. We can't control that, right? That it just takes so many minutes to get somewhere. Fortunately, we have a train that goes through Fitchburg 2 times a week and hauling rock. So we don't get to throw the train reason for delays in here. And then the other thing we look at here with the times is that destination to back in service. This is that turnover time, right? By the time they get there, give off that patient care report, get everything cleaned up, potentially get back in service, right? All this adds up to about an hour. Right. For us, when we look at that average, from the time an ambulance is dispatched to the time it's back in service is roughly an hour. This is the heat map for the last 12 months. So you can kind of see, it's very similar to that map that you saw before. This is where we go, right? The stronger the orange or the stronger the red is where we get more of those calls. The lighter the blue, we just get the little calls. So you can actually see, based on our location, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, right? It's the fish hatchery corridor where we have high-density housing. If you move to the south of that, it's our Chapel Valley area where we have a lot of senior housing. When we move back over to that King James Way area, or the orange dot that's up there, another senior housing up where Quarry Ridge is. And then if we move into Verona, on that southeast or the bottom left part of your screen, that big orange dot, That is Verona's right, population of senior housing. And then when we do kind of the rest of the orange there around the middle of Verona, that's where they are developing. Way down in that bottom right-hand corner, part of Fitchburg, right, is Oak Hill. So, and in between there are farms, right, very sparsely populated areas. And then the Southdale neighborhood in that upper right-hand corner. So you can see we're going where you would anticipate that we would be going.
So, Patrick, can I ask you about this? We've had a lot of discussions about the increase in service, and I think you said we're 6 to 8% increased generally. In an earlier slide, you showed that our population increase went up 7,000 people to 55,000. So I just did quick math. That's a 13% population growth. So we actually are growing in ambulance calls at half the rate of the population growth. So, and I've been one who's been saying, like, all these senior housing places, we're doing too many calls there for like falls and, you know, sort of nuisance things. But it does seem like part of it is just we have many more people that could potentially call the ambulance.
It is.
Yeah.
We do. Yes, we do talk about it. There's many factors involved, and we do continue to talk amongst ourselves as well as that commission level of like how do we've brought this up in municipal meetings, right? Throwing ambulances on the street is not necessarily the answer, right? And it's not even a Band-Aid. It's going to help fix part of the problem of putting more ambulances on the street, but how do we do fall prevention? How do we prevent people from calling? Do all of those people need to go to the hospital? All questions, right? We can package that and sell it to the rest of the nation. We'd get lots of money for it, but probably not because it's an ambulance service, right? But
it's also just the general population. I don't know if most of our population growth is elderly people, or if it's just families and housing scattered or wherever they're going, you know, lots of apartments and stuff.
Yeah, so I did a handful of years ago, I did have an alder actually ask me that, right? Can we attribute most of this growth to an elderly population? And we actually specifically, Jeff was actually able to pull those numbers, right? We know and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but essentially we have kind of figured out, we have had 3 new senior housing developments in the last, I want to say 3 years, and we can actually pull what the call volume is to those places. They're single-digit percentage increases, but we start adding them all together. That starts adding to that. We've also were able to pull what our average patient population was. I think we did a poll for the last 3 years and then went back about 10 years and looked at that average patient population. It went up 10 years in 10 years. So our average patient population is going up. I can't necessarily, I don't want to correlate the two of them together, but it is a fact that's out there that we do have nationwide, we have an aging population. So that's where we're getting our calls. Other things we report, really, they're just the kind of the facts that I share with the commission. Calls by day of the week, again, going back to the median to try to take those extremes out of there. You can see, right, there's no really one solid day other than everybody starts their week off okay, and then by the end of the week, we don't want to go to work anymore. So it just kind of goes up a little bit. It's not a significant number. And then here's our calls by time of day. Again, pulling that median up there, we're pretty steady in that where those calls are. I always like to report this as we do the fancy graphic in there. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen. As we look, and I'll share about the peak time truck next year, this is that area we're targeting. By putting another ambulance in there, right, I don't necessarily need an ambulance at 3 o'clock in the morning, right, that low part of that bar there. That's where we need that additional truck on the road. Just always like to share the reasons we're called. I always share sick person and falls. They just flip-flop back and forth every month or every other month. Number one reason why we get called, right? The rest of those reasons just kind of like move around as they do. But most of those just stay in there for our top 70% of our calls. Calls by station. Station number 2, as you can imagine, is right in the middle. It does get the most number of calls, but it's still not an extreme percentage between the two of them, right? It's 36% in that middle and about 34 and 32% for the other 2 stations. This is that number as we continue to look at growth. I started tracking this about a year ago. And you can compare it to a number of years compared to last year. What these two are says all trucks are out on calls. So I run a report that just says it's called overlapping calls. That just means at one point during a 24-hour period, all 3 trucks were out on calls, meaning that we had no additional resources left in our municipality. I don't break it down by availability. That could have been 1 minute. That could have been an hour. But at that point, 23 times last month, all of our ambulances were out of service. Of those, and now this is a year-to-date number, 44 times this year to the end of September, all of our ambulances were out, and somebody else had to come into our district to take our calls. As you can see, it was 45 all of last year. We are already at 44 for this year. Comparative, before we opened Fitchburg Fire Station number 3 in our 3rd ambulance, we were averaging 9 to 10 times a month where somebody else was coming in. Right, so that was we were at 100. So we're still better than we were 5 years ago, right before we had 3 stations on there. But we are very quickly catching up. That number is never going to be 0, right? I'd love to be able to put an ambulance on every corner. That number is never going to be 0. We depend on each other. From that initial earlier slide where you saw the number of times we go into other communities. Right, so we went into Madison 8 times last month. Most of those were because we were closer than one of their ambulances, not because they were out. So there is a little bit of an exchange program that occurs here, but that number to note, right, 44 times. And this isn't that another ambulance was closer. This is we were out of ambulances. So usually it is the city of Madison. It has been Belleville. It has been Oregon. It has been Middleton who's had to come into our territory. So, right, as we look at those numbers there, it looks at that future growth, making sure we're taking care of our own district.
Chief, can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So at what number would you be concerned? So you're saying you'll never get to 0, right?
Never get to 0.
But is there like a threshold where you're in a danger zone?
There's not. There's not. It's being good neighbors is what it is. I think that's the best way to put it. That number will never be 0. The city of Madison is right. The city of Madison is looking at putting on another ambulance next year as well. And I think part of the influence of that is, right, they're putting on an ambulance to take care of their citizens, but at the same time, about 40 times they had to send an ambulance into Fitchburg because we were out of our own ambulances, right? And as we trickle our ambulances down, right? If we have to go to Mount Horeb because Mount Horeb's on an ambulance, Mount Horeb is out on calls and doesn't have any ambulances. I would expect this commission said, hey, you want to reach out to Mount Horeb? The municipalities in Mount Horeb that said, you kind of need to take care of your people because we're helping you out. The city of Madison is going to reach us to say, you want to take care of your people, right? We are there to help each other out, but at the same time, the taxpayers from here are paying for those trucks. So it's municipal responsibility. Long answer to there's no magic number. But you can keep in mind that most of those 44 times, meaning we're out of ambulances, we're extending that response time because you're waiting for an ambulance outside of our district to come in.
Resisting the urge to completely overanalyze this, we talked about the peak times and the addition of an ambulance during those peak times. Any guesses as to what portion of that 44 mutual aid were during peak times? Are we talking 90%, 70%, 50%?
Funny you asked. I actually just looked at that this morning for just September to see, as we're trying to figure out where that peak time ambulance is, right? When do those duplicate calls, right? When do those occur? I am guessing, right? But even just the scribbling on the sheet that I printed off, about 80% of them actually occurred during the day between that 7 and 7. So pretty significant amount, but yes, clearly not all of them. Some of these are 2 o'clock in the morning. That wouldn't help. We're never going to get that number to 0. As far as financials, we share this with our commission every month as well. I apologize that the print is so small. We have a handful of our checking and money marking that tends to be our operational budget. We have a savings account that is the home to most of our assigned funds. And then we have the Oak Bank CDs, which are where most of our, again, the unassigned funds, we kind of earmark those at the reserves. So they're sitting in there earning those that interest, and we just don't touch that. The interest from those CDs does actually roll into our operational account and is actually accounted for in our budget process. We do have assigned funds, FAP funds. I'll talk about what we purchase with those in a little bit, but FAP funds, FAP stands for the Funding Assistance Program. That is money we get from the state. That is based on a combination of per capita call volume, and there's something else in there based on the number of applicants, but that is free money we get from the state. It is restricted. The state does dictate what we can spend that on or can't spend that on. Technically, they say it cannot be part of a budgeted item. It's really used to supplement an operating budget. We get funds from EPIC. Have got funds from EPIC this year. I'll talk about what we spend those on. Falls Prevention Grant, that was a cooperation for the county. We got that last year. We have kind of moved some of those funds off and reallocated them to a different organization. So there's our total assigned funds that we track. And then at the bottom, that is the investment account, the Wisconsin investment. I'm drawing a blank on what it is. It's an investment account for municipalities. You'll see there's 3 different lines items on there. The HRA, that's our post-retirement healthcare account. So that is where we put, as our employees retire, they get paid out their sick time. That's where we pull those funds from. And then this year actually, with the audit, which again I'll talk about in a little bit, we're actually able to put some more of the unassigned fund balance into a reserve, getting better interest from the investment account than we were from CDs. So we're kind of distributing that unassigned balance, that reserve fund, between Oak Bank and the investment account.
Where does the money come from? The checking and the CDs? Where's that money come from?
Oak Bank. Like where?
How did the district get that to have those accounts?
So as I kind of talk about the budget stuff, so 50% or anything we bill for our services, so all of our run income will go into that checking account, as well as the 2 times a year we get our municipal funds. That all goes into our checking account. Oak Bank then maintains, for FDIC insurance, that checking account is always maintained at $250,000. Everything else gets sent into the sweep account. So that's why we put those 2 accounts together. Oak Bank just moves money back and forth for us to keep checking at $250. Everything else goes into the sweep. So you can see right middle of November is when we're about halfway through our municipal funding, which should get us through the rest of the year. An advantage to us as an ambulance service that bills for our services, we do have ideally, right, we have a steady flow of income coming in over 12 months, with the exception, as I have been sharing with the commission, of the current government shutdown has actually shut down Medicare payments.
That was my question.
Yeah, I just sent you the latest update this morning. For the first 15 days of the month, we were instructed, our billing company was instructed to not even bill for Medicare patients. Reason being there is a flat rate, but then there's actually these different supplementals that occur based on rural, suburban, super urban, super rural. Those actually do have to be processed by people who are no longer working. So had we submitted all of those claims, they would have paid them. Our billing company actually would have had to resubmit all of them to get that supplemental payment. So they were told not to even bill them. As of this morning, they were going to start billing them. As of yesterday, they were going to start billing them. As of this morning, they were instructed, you can submit them and bill them, but they're not going to get paid. When people ultimately do get back to work, they will flip the switch. All of that will get processed and we will get paid. But for the time being, while the government is shut down, we're actually not getting our Medicare reimbursements, which is why we have a reserve fund. Big picture, right, as I have referenced a little bit. So that takes us back to September of 1976. When Fitch-Rona was formed, you can see there's a pretty significant increase in calls in there. There's kind of the big highlights of the growth of Fitch-Rona. 2001 is when we became a full-time service from a volunteer service. We still have the 3 people, myself being one of those people who were hired here during that event that brought us to the career service from a volunteer service. 2 years after that, right, shortly thereafter, found that need of, we got a significant number of calls and we actually put a second ambulance in service. Survived pretty good from 2003 to 2019 before we saw that line go really high. Added that 3rd full-time ambulance service in our full-time ambulance in 2019. And then here's our stars of where we're going, right? If we continue under this 5 to 9% growth, this is what this is going to look like in the next 10 to 15 years. All right, adding a peak time ambulance next year and hopefully increasing those days for the following years over the next, and the goal would be the next 2 to 3 years would be to get that peak time ambulance up to at least 5 to 7 days a week, recognizing that by 2030, probably long before that, we're actually going to be over 6,000 calls with 3 ambulances, right? That's not sustainable. We'll have to be adding another 4th and 5th ambulances as we look 5 to 8 years on into the future. Yes?
Because when we add
we should just give them one to hand back and forth.
So my understanding is when we add an ambulance, we need to hire 7 additional staff, isn't it?
For one full-time ambulance, it is 7 full-time people, correct?
So I am looking at the 2026-28. Okay. So I know that ambulance is in the CIP.
Yes.
So for staffing planning purpose, we need to, for the 27 or 28 budget, we need to consider adding 7 people, isn't it?
Yes and no. One of the options here, and I think I truly believe we're on the direction to do this ideally, yes, if you can let me have 7 full-time people, I will take them. Realizing the challenges that all of our municipalities are in, I think the steps we're doing now with with a peak time ambulance, 4 full-time people would get me a peak time truck 7 days a week. 7 days a week for that peak time ambulance. The schedule would not be great. The hours would not be great. So I think the plan that we're doing now, right, and that's next year of putting in a peak time ambulance with some of our part-time staff or hiring permanent part-time staff, I do believe between 26, 27, and 28, I think this is a better option that is I don't want to say more fiscally responsible, but fiscally viable to do that over the next 3 years. But truly shooting in the future of, right, it's already 2025, within 5 years from now, it needs to be a full-time truck, and we probably are looking at a 5th truck.
We're already over 5,000 where we're at right now. I think I am on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our projection's 5,000 to 6,000. We're already over that in 2025.
Yeah, Mayor, you are absolutely correct. That's what our numbers look like. Yep.
Can I make a comment too? I tried to push it. There, now it's on. So we ought to be looking at this in the context of population growth. There was just a revision by CARPC, I think it was CARPC, recently revising upwards the expected population growth in Dane County. I don't know if they broke it down by community, but I imagine Verona and Fitchburg are going to absorb a lot of that population growth. And while we worry about adding ambulances and services, we ought to do it in the context of what our communities are likely to look like. By 2030 to 2031, we may have an additional 10 or 15,000 people that we're serving too, or more.
Absolutely. With that, of every time I hear we are building, I believe both municipalities have senior housing projects. Both cities, at least I know, have senior housing projects.
It's not just senior housing, it's EPIC employees. And Exact Sciences or wherever they're all working. I don't know where they're going.
Exactly. My target is always those senior housing projects.
Don't blame it on the old people.
And inpatient rehab facility and 2 large clinics all coming in within the next couple of years. So, right, these are conservative estimates of where we're going to be as we try to figure out, right, how we're going to support our communities. So there it is, kind of in words, right? In anticipated next year, the goal, we have that approved, tentatively approved, optimistically approved. Peak time ambulance for next year, putting a 4th ambulance in 2 days a week. The goal then, in 2027 would be to ask for 2 to 3 more days a week. That would get us up to at least 5 days a week. And then hopefully in 2028 to maybe make that, right, all 7 days a week, putting that 4th truck in there. Recognizing, as the mayor brought up, in 2030, ideally, right, that would be 7 full-time people in the next 5 years, and then probably starting that cycle all over again and putting a 5th truck in service. As I talked about those assigned fund balances, I always like to publicly thank Epic, though they don't like us to publicly thank them. They just like to thank you, right? We were able to submit some requests of equipment, not necessarily wants, but needs. One thing we did actually this year was actually to replace, I don't want to say our aging bicycle fleet, but we kept them in good condition, but we had to use our own feet to pedal our bikes. How horrible is that? We got to replace them with e-bikes this year. So Epic actually helped paid for those. Those are actually first responder e-bikes. So we were able to replace the bikes, the bags they have with little lights and a little horn on them. So predominantly we use those bikes out at our Epic events, as well as we use them out at the Alliant Energy Center, so for special events. So we got 2 of them this year. The other thing they did is I talked about our responder rehab trailer. We were actually able to purchase an inflatable shelter. So the inside of that is still, it looks much bigger than I think it really is. It's about a 15 by 12 shelter. I always share, the driver of this is, we did have 2 structure fires earlier this year, one in Cross Plains, one actually in Fitchburg. They came in right at 6 o'clock as I was rolling in the door, so I hooked up the rehab trailer and went and stood in the pouring rain and got all soaking wet as I helped with responder rehab, right? So when the chief gets wet, we need to change something. So for staff, right, and Devin is going to talk about this in a little bit, but we're actually able to purchase an inflatable shelter for our rehab trailer. We fire up our generator, plug that thing in, and that shelter is actually standing in 3 minutes. 2.5 minutes. Something to get our responders out of the elements, out of the rain, the cold, the heat. At this point, it's not heated or cooled, but it is out of the rain and the elements. So we can actually now move our equipment, our chairs, our tables, water and nutrition in there to help our firefighters or for our extended events. And then I talked about the funding assistance program, or our FAP funding. Significant amount that came, again, shout out to our legislators for supporting EMS. We got a significant increase in our funding this last state fiscal year. Up on Patrick's wish board has been this oxygen generator for years, but it actually comes at a pretty significant cost. With the funds we got from the state, brought it to the commission. They said it was fine to go ahead and purchase this. So this is actually installed in the Fitch-Rona fire station, but we are now self-sufficient to fill our own oxygen tanks. Both the ones in the ambulance and our little portables that we use, and we have actually rolled that over to we fill our firefighters' oxygen tanks as well. Previously, we relied on a contractor, right, from the city or a contractor in Dane County here. Big savings here is everything costs money, but we were charging delivery fees, and that was actually a $35 per week delivery fee for them to come to our stations and drop off and pick things up. So that alone, we are saving $35 a week in delivery costs, as well as all the greenness of keeping trucks not having to stop at our stations. Other part of this is we were dependent on them to come pick up our tanks and drop them off. Though there's potential for access, right? There's access issues. If they can't get in, they can't pick them up. They're gone for 2 weeks. It's always a bit of a hiccup to get oxygen filled, kind of something we need. Again, we are now self-sufficient. The Fitch-Rona fire station is where this is, which is also on a backup generator. So big picture stuff in the case of a natural disaster, we are self-sufficient in maintaining our own oxygen, have shared that information with our partners down at Oak Hill, right? Should they ever run into a need, we can fill their oxygen tanks. If we ever had citizens who were again, in a natural disaster and needed oxygen tanks, we could actually fill those oxygen tanks for them. So great purchase for us that lives in Fitch-Rona. There's a compressor in there. It makes water. I'm not even going to go to explain how it makes oxygen. I'm sure Devin can tell you, right? So it's the witchcraft that's in there, right? It's magic. As we look to the future, the things that continue to be up on Patrick's wish list board, how do we improve employee safety and patient care? One of those point of care lab testing, it's called an ISTAT is the most common one. Right, there's some challenges that come with it, but what it can provide is in-field blood tests. Big challenge with that is most of those things need to be refrigerated. But as we look to the future, right, we could be sitting in Oak Hill on the far side of Fitch-Rona, or those partners we go to Mount Horeb. We were down in the town of Perry the other day, which I know is about a 30-minute transport. We could truly be running patient blood tests in our ambulance and reporting those to the hospital. As far as employee safety, oxygen cylinder lifts, right? They're aluminum tanks that we have in our ambulances, but there's still a significant weight to them. You can mount things in our ambulances that'll pick them in and out. Not going to venture too deep into it because that's going to be stealing next year's thunder. Pre-hospital blood. So Dane County, we are already in talks with multiple agencies in Dane County to actually be providing whole blood or platelets or whatever that turns into be into the field in Dane County. Working through logistics, it makes no sense for us as individual EMS agencies to put blood in the field. We just don't have the resources to do that. But as a collective in Dane County, I truly believe by the end, probably the middle or the 2/3 of the way through next year, there will be the opportunity if we have a significant trauma or a significant medical incident where a patient may benefit from blood, we'd actually be able to pick up a radio and somebody's actually going to be bringing us blood into a home or to the side of the road. Great opportunities there. Some of the counties around us are already doing that. It's just a logistical challenge. The blood supply is precious, so we need to make sure we're not wasting it. So that's what we're, and then the initial startup costs. So I have no doubts that next year I'll be telling you all about that. Fit testing for respiratory disease, respiratory challenges, and then dash cams in our ambulances, right? Kind of that wish list thing of things we can look for the future. Yes?
I would encourage dash cams. Just for my protecting ourselves. I work for a large corporation, and we have a lot of trucks. And in some parts of our service territory, people intentionally run into us or get ahead of us and slam the brakes and try to sue a large corporation. That's not quite as prevalent with a municipal service, but you're going at a high speed sometimes to things, and people will do careless things, and it can protect. The thing happens, it happens. Hopefully no one's hurt, but I would, if you have the evidence, then it can absolve the city of lawsuits too. So I would encourage you, Lidex is the company we use, and they really do a good job.
May I ask for it's on my priority list. We do actually have one ambulance that does actually have the 360-degree recording camera system. So it's just a matter of working on putting that in all of our future ambulances or getting a grant to retrofit the ones we have.
It'll catch the driver swearing at someone.
I concur. Yeah, the current system we have is actually an external system. I know Wanakee has the external and internal system, but as you can see, it's on my wish list. So that is way more than what I report out to the commission every month. They get it on paper and we do a quick overview. But I always love to share what we're doing here at Fitch-Rona. That's the kind of fun stuff that we're doing. This time they don't like to stand up. Well, maybe they do, but they're probably going to sit. I just stand up and pace the room here. But the two deputy chiefs both have kind of little projects they work on, so they have 3 to 5 minutes.
Now I get 5 minutes?
3 to 5 minutes. I'm told there's a sports ball game on that people want to watch.
Yes,
so
we're losing,
we'll try
by
to
the
keep
way.
it short for you. But I'll pass it on to Deputy Chief Dostolik.
Thank you very much. We talked a lot about senior housing and some of the ways that we can reduce calls. One of my pet projects for this last year has been falls prevention and working with safe communities. the Age Better organization, Dane County Emergency Management on falls prevention. And I'm looking at to make sure I spelled all my words right there. I'm not really sure if I did or not. So that's been a project each month. I've gone out into the community with a couple other organizations and done falls prevention talks. I counted 14, I think it was, to date, over 120 some participants in those. And we try to hit our facilities here in Fitchburg. So when Patrick mentioned the call volume and the types of calls we go on, you notice falls and sick person are the two top tier calls that we go to. If you're not aware, in the state of Wisconsin leads the nation in falls-related deaths over for people over the age of 60. We lead the nation in that. And so you can imagine if Wisconsin leads the nation, then Dane County and Milwaukee County, the two biggest counties in Wisconsin, certainly have high numbers of falls as well. So we run an average of 20% of our calls are falls-related calls, and so we try to do what we can to reduce those. The other thing that's part of my daily project is to reach out to our nursing homes and our senior living centers to make sure that we're staying on top of the types of calls that we're running out of them, especially when we see big swings of call volume and they start to creep up. And then our staff, when they go out on calls into the community, our run reporting software has a little box on it that they can check. We call it the community paramedic box, and they can check that box and then write the reason why they checked the box. And I get a report every morning on why they did that. And those are referred out to our senior centers. So if we have somebody that doesn't fall within an assisted living or a nursing home, we can refer those patients out to our senior centers, and the case managers at each of those communities follows up with those patients to make sure that we don't have those falls or those issues in the future. We don't really, we get concerned about those single falls that people go out on, but historically, if they fall once, they're going to fall again, and it's those subsequent calls that can be catastrophic to their livelihood. So those are the things that we work on a daily basis, besides all the other administrative stuff that falls within my realm. 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. And then brand new to us this year, Deputy Chief Anders. He was that new hire, that new position that we took a while to get filled, but has been doing a phenomenal job for us, so that this is his first annual meeting with us.
So part of my job is about 3/4 training and about 25% operational. One of the first things I did coming on to the Fitch-Rona department was survey our staff to see what they would like to see from a training chief. After we got lots of survey results from that, we kind of honed in on what we were going to do. The biggest thing that staff said is, hey, we get all of our CPR and our ACLS and our PALS and all these things that we're required to take every 2 years from our UW consortium partner. And then they also do all of the continuing education that we need to recertify our licensure. That being said, our staff has access to, you can see some of the pictures here, all these awesome tools. The thing with that is we don't use them every single day. We don't use them every single month. These are the things that we use for high acuity patients, but it's very low frequency. So what did we do for training? So we have 1 dose, 1 weight cot scales, ventilators, IV pumps. We worked on performing high performance CPR as a team with our fire department partners, worked on airway management. One of the biggest things that our staff said was we would love new video laryngoscopes. So we had manufacturers give us all their latest and greatest toys. We let our staff play with them, pick them out, and then I went on a very, very long couple months of putting together a training program so that they were as comfortable as possible. We did point of care ultrasound. This month we are doing UTV and rehab trailer deployment, especially with that big new inflatable tent. You have to fold it just right, otherwise it's not going to go back into its bag. Next month we're doing surgical airways and rounding the year out with MAVIS and active shooter training. What does that look like on a monthly basis?
Do you want to tell us what MAVIS?
MAVIS is our mutual aid box alarm system. So if there is a large incident, whether it's fire, mass casualty incident, a severe weather-related incident, agencies kind of pool their resources to all respond to those incidents. All dispatched through our comm center. On an average month, I'm going out and doing in-person training sessions 12 to 13 times. So if you think I work about 20 days a week, or not a week, a month, excuse me, I'm spending quite a bit of my time doing that. Average training session is about 2 hours. And again, that was kind of pulled between the staff. Yes, staff is working 24 hours. I'm only here 8 hours a day. Staff has lots of other things to do, especially between the fire department and EMS department. I actually go to each of the stations. And throughout the month, we make sure that everyone on all 3 of our shifts, including our Kelly shift, gets that training. That includes Fitch-Rona paramedics, all of the career Verona firefighters, Fitchburg firefighters, and all the interns. And if there's any part-timers that are working on any of those days, they also get that training. Year to date, we didn't start training until about March, but we've done 168 hours of on-duty EMS training and about 140 on-duty fire training. Along with that, there's one group from our department that misses out on a lot of that, and that's our LTEs. Occasionally, they'll be on shift. We'll get them through the training, but we started doing a quarterly training where for the last 4 months, those LTEs will come in for a 4-hour period, and they'll get the last 4 months of training that all the full-time staff got. And so far, we've had nothing but positive feedback from our staff, from the fire department staff, and have kind of taken this even further. Does anyone have any questions? Awesome. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, there's your question slide. Any things I've talked to you about this point? Otherwise, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the budgets that you have seen already a handful of times in the last couple of months. So we'll start with the capital improvement projects, or CIP stuff. So we have 2 of them that we enter every year, and that is ambulance replacements, right? Reiterating kind of how I started, we have a fleet of 6 ambulances. 2015, 2017, 2019, 2021, as you can see, we purchase a new ambulance every 2 years. However, right around that 2021 time, we had a little hiccup with this whole thing called COVID that threw the manufacturing world into chaos. We still have not recovered from that. So we missed our 2023. I don't say we missed it. I had one on order. I just didn't get it in 2023. We ended up getting 2 of them in 2025. So 2025 would have been the next replacement cycle. So there was no additional cost to our municipalities. We just didn't buy one. So we ended up getting 2 in 2025. Throws the system off a little bit. And then what we ended up doing was keeping one. Historically, we've had a fleet of 5. We run 3 ambulances. We have 5 of them, 2 of them kind of in a reserve status, or there's a handful of days every year where between what we have on our streets, what we have at the Alliant Energy Center, and other events in our district, as well as things out for maintenance, we do have all 5 of them on the streets. Again, a handful of days. There have times we've had epic, there's still vehicles, right? So there's been the epic mechanical failures, and we have been in both of our backup trucks. So that was why we had 5 in anticipation of what actually, thank you, had occurred, is our peak time truck next year, right? So there'll be 2 days next year where we will have 4 trucks in the streets, still giving us those 2 reserve trucks that we can use for special events or to rotate through when we have routine maintenance done. Braun is the ambulance that we have of choice. That's our manufacturer, and they're all built on an F450, or starting in 2021, we have increased them to an F550 chassis. they're just big, heavy trucks, right? If you've ever ridden in the back of them, they look comfortable. They're not, right? It's still a big, heavy truck. What that means is if we continue to replace one every 2 years, they live as a frontline truck for 8 years. They move into that backup status for 4 years, which means we keep our trucks for 12 years. By then, they've got about 150 to 180,000 miles on them. We're already seeing, right, that 2015 that we have. It's a vehicle. It's got some wear on it. We just kind of start to see that maintenance cost go up. As with everything else, right, we hope to plan like that 3%-ish cost of increase on all of our purchases. Reality says our trucks are going up anywhere between about 10 to 15% almost every year. So the last trucks we bought in 2025 came with I take it back, we have a truck on order for 2027 in 2 years from now to replace that 2015. That truck has a $339,000 price tag to it. That is just the truck, right? That is nothing inside of it. So this is the first year I threw that up on the slide. If I actually take about the 5 big durable goods that we historically, what we do for CIP then is when we replace the ambulance, we replace the big durable items as opposed to presenting you with 8 different CIP projects that replace the things. We just replace those things with an ambulance. So the big 5 things that go in there, which is the cot loader, the vent, the cardiac monitor, the radios. I know I'm forgetting something else in there. It's about another $115,000 for the durable goods in there, about another $50,000 on top of that for the disposable goods. So those prices just keep going up. We account for those. We can use state funding for that, which I'm trying to start to kind of balance that out as long as we get some of that state funding to replace some of those durable goods. Other project that we have out there for CIP is our support vehicles. They're built into the same fleet replacement program. I believe all 3 municipalities are on that. They just set aside funds every year as opposed to seeing the spikes every 2 years. Is our 2 SUVs, because that's the other thing that comes with significant cost. So the next vehicle for our support vehicles will be replaced. We put anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 miles on them a year. It's about the same 9 miles from Verona to Station 3 and back. So, between the 3 of us, right, I refer to my FedEx run of the day where I need to go check in with people and see people and move stuff around. We also do use those as response vehicles. I did not report that up there as part of that chief's report, but I do report every month. It's roughly 10 times-ish a month where we are going out on calls as well. Some of those is actually to assist crews, right? If it's a larger event, multi-vehicle accident, we'll go out there and provide kind of that EMS support out there and help manage EMS resources. Most of the time, I would have to say it's because we're either in Verona or if Jeff is up at Station 3, the ambulance in Verona or that Station 3 ambulance is out, which means an ambulance is coming from farther away. We will first respond and start care. I do feel like I'm seeing it more and more as well with those similar things. If that ambulance is coming farther away or we're responding, and it is, Jeff had talked about a fall who is not injured or a motor vehicle crash or they're not injured and those patients don't want to be transported, we're turning ambulances around. So it's actually helping to truly keep resources available as opposed to having that ambulance come all the way from Fitchburg to Verona to have somebody sign something that they didn't want to go. We can take care of that. So we are using those vehicles just outside of driving around back and forth between the stations. That's our CIP for our operational budget. This is our current, again, we charge for services. So this is our current transport fees. We do charge fees. We have a no transport fee. We actually have 2 different no transport fees. Our current policy is, right, if we get there and we evaluate somebody, they didn't call, they're not injured, frequently it's our falls, right? Somebody truly just needs to be helped, picked up and assisted, maybe to back in bed or a chair. Well, we don't charge for those, right? We acknowledge that we are a tax-based entity. Some people's taxes do go to support us, so we do provide that at no charge. If there is an assessment done, right, somebody does fall and hits their head, right, and we check vital signs, why did you fall, bandage up a head, there is a fee to that. About 3 years ago, we stopped itemizing our supply charges. Medicare didn't acknowledge them anyways, so we had to start batching those into base rates, so it's just easier now. We do look at what we use in supplies. we kind of do figure out the average supply usage we have, and it's actually built into that base rate. And then we charge for mileage. Our standby fee as well when we go to the Alliant Energy Center. Essentially, any event we do other than for the school district, we do charge for a dedicated ambulance. Right, reasoning behind that is, again, back to that dedicated ambulance. I can send them an ambulance, but to be available for the taxpayers, that 911 ambulance, they'll be there, they may get called away. If somebody wants an ambulance at their event for their people, they absorb 100% of that cost, right? We figure out what it costs for us to send our two highest paid people there, and that's what it costs them. So it is a 100% cost recovery on any sort of standbys. Based on that, right, building on 3% or average of 4% over last year. So anticipating, right, emergency services is completely unpredictable. So though we're on target for 5,600 calls this year, right, next year the world could actually calm back down and we might only get 5,100. And I don't want to have to come back to you and say, I didn't get enough run revenue, I need more funds. So we base our run income off of $5,100. 5,100 calls. Other fees that we charge, and this is posted on our website to be compliant, we do have a $35 non-sufficient fund fee in case we get checks back, and we do have the option to pay bills by credit card, so there's that cost recovery for that.
Patrick, do you want to maybe explain that we don't get $1,500 for every single call that we go on, or $1,400 for every single call? So that's what we charge, but Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements are not even close to that.
Yeah, I believe, any government, Medicare, Medicaid, VA is actually, I believe, paying full cost, workers' comp stuff. So yeah, the average Medicare reimbursement, I believe we're up to about $360 on a $1,500 call.
Okay, I have a question.
So for your budget, when you calculate your revenues, okay, do you account what percentage those calls are Medicaid, and you calculate according to that 360? You don't do the 1,000 for, you know what I mean?
So we figure out run revenue based on two factors. So our billing company, we get a report monthly on all of our payers, all of the different types of payers, and based on billing and true collections and contractual write-offs, ultimately what the average cost is. So based on mileage and the average collection rate, based on all the different types of payers. So we do actually have one spreadsheet that says 5,100 calls, we bill 70% of them, we collect an average of $443 based on all of our payers. We collect $443 for base rates, X amount of dollars for mileage. Based on all of that, we should receive this amount of funds. And then we actually take that and compare it to this chart that actually says, in reality, this is what we got for the previous 5 years. So we take the Excel spreadsheet, right, that says based on what our current collection rate is, based on our estimated run volume, this is what we should get. And then we actually look at what we actually did get from the previous couple of years. We average them together, and I throw the dart in the middle.
Okay.
So it's based on the previous kind of hiccups of Patrick thinking he knew more than Lon did events. It's a system to double check. So you can see up here, right? Currently, we're averaging based on whether you're a Medicare, right? Have phenomenal. You're a private pay. You're a Medicare patient. We get $418 for every call that we run, and then we figure that out. I do point out that the double asterisk up there, the hiccup during 2 years ago's transition between billing companies. It was not the smoothest ride. And there was there was 2 months there where no calls got billed. And of course, it was the end of the year, so it was October and November where no calls were billed. So that is why you see a huge spike in 2024 run income, because many of those, and we report the years the run was received, not when the event occurred, but what the money actually came in. So that's why we see a huge spike in 2024, because that was almost 2 months of billings that was never done in 2023. So that threw the average off.
Yeah, no, I know. But I remember that. What about the percentage? Do you include in this calculation a percentage of allowance for for bad debt? You know, if there are people that they're not going to pay.
So this includes all of the, yes.
Okay.
So this is every run that is billed out and what we actually collected. So yes, once those that, in theory, we bill 30, 60, 90 days, and that at 120 days, that call goes to the collection agency, and that bad is debt, but it was considered billed. So this is $418.
Yeah, in your accrual accounting is there, but then in your cash basis, it's not going to be there.
Correct.
So my other question is, what is that percentage annually, the people that they don't pay? You know, I mean, that.
I would have to find that out for you.
Okay.
That number is available, but I would find out. We do have a hardship. We actually do. Thank you. That was actually Alder Gerhardt helped us develop that hardship policy a couple of years ago. I will say we do continue to see the hardship requests go up every year. It's not nearly hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's probably tens of thousands of dollars of hardship requests we do get. And we have a policy to review that. And then that debt is just written off. So that is what we get for revenue. As far as expenses, here's the highlights for our expenses. We did see an uptick in unscheduled overtime this last year, really truly taking that and matching it on not just estimates, but actuals. If you look at the itemized budget, which is in your municipal packet, you'll see we have regularly scheduled hours. The weird thing that we have is called scheduled overtime, because our staff, our paramedics work 48-hour work weeks. They work 2 24-hour days. So as you imagine, right, FLSA says you can only work 40 hours a week without having 8 hours of overtime. So we have scheduled overtime, right? We know every employee is going to work 8 hours of overtime every week. Anything above and beyond that 48 hours goes into the pot of unscheduled overtime. Other thing to point out with that unscheduled overtime is all of those events that we do are unscheduled overtime, right? Because they're not planned events. Next year, the Alliant Energy Center could tell us we don't want you to come out and support our events anymore. So I don't want to plan on $100,000 expenditure in wages. That's not going to come. As I mentioned, that is all cost recovery. So we actually did up the income this year from those events from historically what we've seen. And those are actually counted in the unscheduled overtime. The other part we've been really this year have really partnered with Madison Fire Department as they continue to see the number of events in the city of Madison rising. We're actually starting to support their events as well. Badger Games, I'm trying to think what else we did. Alliant Energy Center, concerts, some of the mini marathon. We're down there as then helping them out as well. So all that counts to our unscheduled overtime. We did increase the funding into our post-retirement health care. I know of at least 2 retirements for next year, possibly a third, as we kind of have, I think I share that every year, I have at least 5 of my staff over the age of 50 who have been here for 20 years. So we're going to start tapping into that post-retirement health care next year. We had our first one this year, and that's going to start to get tapped away at. As I mentioned, right, the increasing cost of disposable medical supplies and uniforms. Yes. I'll just give her the microphone to sit in the chair.
Can you explain a little bit more about this post-retirement healthcare fund?
So that is when so there's a couple different components to it. So contractually, we have a cap to sick time, which we'd never had until we had employees who worked here for 15 years. Once they hit that cap, again, 2 components to this. Once they hit that cap and they still work here, they are paid out anything over that cap at 50% of their hours. So maybe Patrick has his 1,296-hour bank. Every year I earn another 44 hours of sick time. Well, my cap is 1,296. So at the end of the year, of that 144 hours, half of that is paid out at their wage into a post-retirement health care that they can use when they retire.
Oh.
The other component of that is when they retire, that whole balance, be it $12.96 or maybe I used all of my sick time in the 15 years I was here and I have 24 hours, whatever that balance is paid out at 100% into that post-retirement health care. We don't manage that. That is actually managed by a third party. It costs us nothing, but it's actually an investment account. So once they leave here, that pot is given to them and they can use it at retirement. Very similar. Essentially, it works like a flex account. So though we call it post-retirement healthcare, they can use it for anything that a normal flex account could be used for, as long as they meet our retirement requirements, which is state retirement requirements. But based on how long they've been here, what their current wage is, that could be anywhere between $30,000 and $60,000. It's a phenomenal benefit.
Yeah, I know. This is what I asked.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to start paying that a lot out in the next couple of years. So we want to make sure we keep that fully funded. So when Patrick retires, it's still there.
And Devin.
And then after that, it's passing it on to Devin to figure it out. Talked about medical disposable supplies. We have already seen those costs go up anywhere between 10 and 20%. Some of those are actually truly coming with tariff charges on them. The increase in costs of preventive maintenance programs, they anywhere between 3 and 5 years. It kind of relates to the button up above it. About 2 years ago, we had the entire the hydraulic system on one of our cots went out. That was about $6,000 just to replace the hydraulic system. So we have preventive maintenance programs on all of our cots, our auto loads, and all of our equipment. And those costs just keep going up because you can imagine the longer we get into the contract, right, the better the cost. So we lock in for 3 to 5 years, but then when it comes to re-up it in about 5 years from now, it's 50% of what it was however many years ago. All of those things together resulted in a 4.69% increase in municipal contributions for 2026. What does that look like as far as apportionment? So you're going to see a big change in numbers. I'll review the intergovernmental agreement, right? That'll take effect on January 1st. So 23, 24, and 25's budget you'll see in there. Once we estimate run income, which I think it's on the next slide, 2 slides. We actually see it on this. So there's the operating budget. Our overall operating budget for 26 will be $4.5 million. We estimate $2.125 million in run income based on the formula I talked about before. Interest in contracted events is almost another $100,000 that we are doing in events. And that is, again, 100% cost recovery, leaving us right with $2.2 million that needs to be covered by the municipalities. So 23 and 24 and 25, if you recall, based on the previous intergovernmental agreement, was 100% based off of equalized value. Right, resulting in about 50 to 55% for Fitchburg, 40%-ish for the city of Verona, and about 5% for the town of Verona. With the rewriting of the intergovernmental agreement, this is what it looks like. So what it did is it took an average of 1/3 per capita, 1/3 call volume in those municipalities, and 1/3 of equalized value, averaging them over 3 years to prevent the spikes in new facilities coming in. Average them over, so that's what it looks like this year. So it turned city of Fitchburg into roughly 63%, city of Verona into about 32%, and the town of Verona largely remained unchanged at about that 5%. So you can see where you were. I'm sorry, one more slide. This is what we're looking at. This is where you're at this year, right, compared to last year. So it resulted in about a 19% increase for the city of Fitchburg. City of Verona went down about 13%. Town of Verona went down about 17%. All right, averaging out to that 4.69%. I will point out as I back up, sorry, there's 3 slides, I'd love to go between them. If you look, the percentage you're seeing here is the percent of the overall operating budget. So if you look up top there, 50-ish%, 49.5% of our budget is covered by run income, right? So as I'm trying to sell you the deal of the Fitch-Rona EMS district, right? 50% of what it costs to operate us, we get cost recovery on. So the other 50% is what's supported by the municipalities. Still a big number, completely understand it, but looking at that all in big perspective. So what that ultimately meant for you was $1.4 million for the city of Fitchburg, $732 for the city of Verona, $93,000 for the town of Verona. A couple more things to point out here as I wrap up. The 2024 audit, we do have an annual audit. We will now have that official. We historically have had reviews. 2024 was an audit. The new intergovernmental agreement does have us doing an audit every year from now. Based on the 2024 audit, we actually did have an unassigned fund balance of $1.6 million. And that actually came much from the previous 3 budgets where we were assisting trying to get that unassigned fund balance increased, taking advantage of the tax levy limits exemption. So that resulted in an unassigned fund balance of 40%. The previous and current intergovernmental agreement require us to have a 15 to 25% unassigned fund balance. So bringing that number to the commission said we have 15% here that we need to deal with. I talked with both cities' finance directors about some ideas, right? What are their recommendations to do with this essentially overage? A couple of the thoughts were what the cities similarly do is one-time purchases to help offset that. One of the other recommendations was to not necessarily change the intergovernment agreement, but to do a good practice of raising that unassigned fund balance to 35%. So again, that came from the finance director. So what I did, right, took and looked at that number and said, all right, let's raise our unassigned fund balance to 35%. Then what do we do with the balance that's left over? Per the intergovernmental agreement, it says at the direction of the municipalities or the commission, that fund isn't Patrick's rainy day fund. The fund actually has to be used for something. So we did 2 different things with that. One of those was actually to take $180,000 and put that, so 2 things. Part of it was kept there to raise it up to 35%. The other part of it was put into the post-retirement health care. So this year we were actually able to take that unassigned fund balance, put another $180,000 into that post-retirement health care. You will not see a full $180,000 transfer into post-retirement health care because we actually did have a retirement this year. So as opposed to moving the funds there and then pulling it back out about 6 weeks later, we actually did have one payout. So ultimately ended up being about $140,000 that went into that post-retirement health care. And we still have that 35% unassigned fund balance. Last thing I'll talk about is things you've heard about, and I always credit Misty, and I think I maybe understand it by now, is the advantages that districts have to exceed local tax levy limits. That's the state statute itself. As long as three criteria are met, the total charges assessed by the EMS district cannot increase by more than CPI plus 2%. This year, that is 4.69%, right? Crazy. It matches our budget increase of 4.69%. So it says you can use this to do whatever you want. Not whatever you want. Again, Patrick doesn't get a rainy day fund. What that 4.69% got you in 2026 was 2 things, right? The peak time ambulance. So we will be using that money in 2026 to staff an additional 4th ambulance 2 days a week. Turned into about $100,000, which when we broke it down into what salaries, wages, and benefits, well, it's not a benefited position short of state retirement, it'll get us 2 days. So that's actually, we'll take those funds next year to that peak time ambulance. The other part of that is I kind of started off saying, able to put some even additional funds into that post-retirement health care, which is, right, that post-retirement health care fund is super well funded for all of our employees who are going to be retiring. So it's really great that we can continue to do that. So because of the tax levy limit exemption, that's actually how we were able to fund that additional staffing for this next year. So thank you for the municipalities for supporting that. That was a lot. What are your questions for me or anybody online? If there's any other budget questions?
My question to you, Patrick, is if you have any concern for 26 with everything is coming from the federal government and how it's going to, the reduction on subsidy for Medicaid and the Affordable Care Program. Do you think that this could affect your projection of revenue? Are you concerned about that?
I don't think it's going to affect our revenue projection. I'm very curious how it's going to affect hardships as people potentially get changes in it. I think it really remains to be seen. Fortunately for us, I think I brought it up last year, the state of Wisconsin, if you have followed anything, just even yesterday, has to go to the governor's office yet, but has increased some Medicaid funding for some of our no transports. The other thing that currently took effect this year, it's got a couple of different names, but it's called WIGMA, Wisconsin Ground Ambulance Transport something. It's a reimbursement program. The state of Wisconsin recognizes that, and it's Medicaid patients, right? As I mentioned, it's about, for Medicare patients, for that $1,500 bill, they reimburse about $350. Medicaid reimburses about $100. So the state has recognized that it's grossly, I don't want to say inadequate, but it's grossly underfunded. So this, going back to 2023, so we had to go back for 2023 and 2024. I just finally got my 2024 one approved. They actually will be providing more run income or reimbursing us. Lots of criteria to meet in there, but I'm anticipating actually about $45,000 from 2023 and probably about $50,000 from 2024. That will always be a reimbursement process, which is a little painful. That is actually included in the run income projection for next year. So we did include that in there, but I think at this point the state is at least recognizing the cost issues and providing some recovery there, but it remains to be seen what's going to happen with private pays.
Okay.
Any other budget questions or concerns? Seeing none. Any other business as allowed by law? Seeing none. Move to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Ayes have it. We're adjourned.